from a human dynamic perspective, as it relates to communication and whether or not we're going to understand and be understood, this is a pivotal point in the interview, because this is where there's a change. This is where Dr. Peterson, for the first time, makes what is a confrontational statement. He says, it's because you're not actually listening. Now, a statement can also be defined as an accusation. Dr. Peterson is accusing Cathy Newman of not listening. But if the statement is accurate, then it's not an accusation, it's an observation. You guys get that? When a supervisor says something to you that you perceive to be critical, if what the supervisor says is accurate, then do not get defensive. Because if it's accurate, it's valid. And if it's valid, then your supervisor has reasons to validly be concerned. And you would be wise to be listening. Well, Cathy Newman isn't listening. When Dr. Peterson says, that's because you're actually not listening. You're just projecting what and we don't even get to hear what Dr. Peterson is suggesting that Cathy Newman is projecting. But if you watch the video, I think it's pretty obvious to a casual observer what Cathy Newman is trying to project. She's trying to project whatever her agenda is. We'll let you decide what that agenda is, but her agenda is not to interview a world-renowned expert on social psychology. Her objective is not to get information from this world expert. Her objective is not to ask probing questions to get a deeper understanding from this world expert. And her objective is not to educate her viewers. She's got an agenda, whatever it may be, but her agenda is not to educate her viewers. Because if it was, she wouldn't have interrupted 10 times in the first 9.5 minutes. We just said that Dr. Peterson makes, for the first time, a statement which could be an accusation if it wasn't true. His statement could be an accusation, you're not actually listening.
That's
because you're actually not listening.
That's an observation, because she's not listening. And when you watch the video, you'll come to that conclusion. She's not listening at all. Clearly, she's not listening. So when you're on the job, when you are being interviewed, spoken to, at a meeting, any type of communication with someone who has the power and the authority to promote you, whether they're younger than you, older than you, same gender as you, same educational background as you, it doesn't matter. The person who has the power and the authority to promote you is somebody you really need to be listening to. As a matter of fact, at Air Consulting, we would suggest that everybody needs to listen to everybody else better and actively listen more, because angst and stress and interpersonal conflict is almost always based on miscommunication and assumption. Cathy Newman is not listening to Dr. Jordan Peterson, and it's blatantly obvious. And yet, and pay attention, millennials, there's a lesson here. When Dr. Peterson says,
it's because you're actually not listening.
I'm listening very carefully, and I'm hearing.
That's because you're not actually listening. You're just projecting she interrupts him again, which means she doesn't have any respect for what he has to say. She's thinking about what she's going to say next. It's reactionary. She says, I'm listening very carefully. And she's clearly not listening, and any casual observer will be able to determine that. I think at that point in time, when Dr. Peterson is trying to help her understand, communication is to understand and be understood. He's trying to help Cathy understand that trying to equate pay is not a simple formula to say you get paid the same as me because we work at the same place. There's a number of factors. That's what his book says. He says it's virtually impossible to truly equate pay. Well, that's not what Cathy Newman wants to hear. She wants to hear that equal pay for equal work, as long as it's gender-based. She's not listening to an intelligent response. Instead, she's rude, she's disrespectful, she interrupts, and then, in my opinion, and the opinion of everybody in our company when we watch this, she actually makes herself out, well, she doesn't make herself out to look very good. Let's try to be charitable about it. She doesn't look intelligent because she immediately reacts and becomes defensive and says, I'm listening very carefully. But you decide whether or not she's listening carefully. Here's the thing, millennials, you want to get a step up in the workplace? Do you want to be recognized? Do you want to have people know? Do you want to have people understand how much you have to contribute? You've got lots to contribute. My gosh, your generation is so educated. Your generation is so at ease with technology. And we're not talking about technology from the dark ages, which is what Cathy Newman seems to be referring to. We're not talking about the wheel. We're talking about functionality of software programs. We're talking about networking. We're talking about writing code. We're talking about things that my generation truly don't understand very much, and we need you. But we need you to communicate to us, and we need you to understand what we're communicating to you. But regrettably, millennials, the people here, whether they're the same age as you, same cultural background, same gender, same educational background, if they're here and you're here, remember, these people have the power to promote you, to raise you up. Make sure you're listening to them. You can't be listening if you're thinking about what you're going to say next. You can't be listening if you're not completely focused. So give them eye contact. Lean forward like I am to demonstrate that you're interested, and then repeat things back. But I tell you, if thinking about what you're going to say next means you're distracted, and it is, if thinking about what you're going to say next is a mental form of interruption, except I can't tell that you're mentally interrupting me by what you're thinking, absolutely interrupting them as Cathy Newman does in numerous times in this interview, and she's supposed to be a journalist. When you actively interrupt, you shoot yourself in the foot. And you're not going to get promoted. I would not take BBC seriously if that was the only piece of journalistic interviewing I'd ever seen in the BBC. I like the BBC. I like watching the BBC. But I tell you, if that interview by Cathy Newman was the only example I had of BBC broadcasting interview, I would never watch that station again. When you have someone in authority, in this case, it's Dr. Jordan Peterson. He's a world authority on social psychology. He's given Cathy Newman the opportunity for her listeners to learn something. But she's not listening. She's interrupting. And just for fun, count how many times Cathy Newman says, "So you're saying this?" And count how many times Dr. Peterson goes, "No, I'm not." Because clearly he's not saying what Cathy Newman is trying to project on him. Because Cathy Newman is only focused on what she's focused on. And she apparently has no desire to educate her viewers whatsoever. Learn from this. Watch Dr. Peterson, because there's a couple of times that Cathy Newman asks him a question, fairly strange question, and you can actually see Dr. Jordan Peterson stop, look down, and he's thinking. He's thinking about what he's going to say next. And he says, I am very, very, very careful about what I say or how I use words. And that's what you want to do as well. Spend twice as much time listening, half as much time talking, and think carefully what you're going to say before you say it. And you will be perceived as the type of intelligent, articulate, well-mannered young adult that anybody, specifically me, would love to promote.